Get your Bible open.
Well, honey, you've got my space covered. See, you're. Thank you. Ah.
Then you asked me if I was ready. Are you ready?
I didn't mean that I was. I just meant, are you? Okay.
Good morning, y'all.
Morning.
This is day 44. Yep, 44. Day 44 of Coffee in Christ, or yeah, I don't have any coffee. So,
Here we are.
before we get started, something I've been trying to wake up early in the morning, and this morning it actually happened to where I actually got up because I wanted to wake up. I want to try to wake up early in the morning and go back over what we went over the day before, just to kind of like reset it. So anyhow, just real quick, to do a recap. Yesterday on 43, we're in Deuteronomy 8, 9, and 10.
Weren't we?
Yeah. So it was 8, 9, and 10. And so I just went back through this morning I just jotted a couple notes down that I thought were important, just to try to recap it. And I probably can't even read my own handwriting there. So, anyhow, so in Deuteronomy 8, 9, and 10, a few of the points where Moses reiterated the Israelites needed to heed everything he was commanding, so they may live and possess the land the Lord promised to give them. So if you'll remember in the beginning, the Lord promised to give them the land of Canaan, and then of course they've gone through all the trials.
Who did he promise to give the land of Canaan?
The Israelites.
Who? Because
It
at the time there wasn't a great group of Israelites. There was only one family.
Yeah, it was it was I guess I call it the forefathers. So
Those
it'd
three.
be. Well, why don't you?
No, go ahead and just ask
throw it
it.
in there? Anyhow, so unless you can throw it in there, we're just going to continue on. 'Cause I don't remember.
It was
all of
Isaac, Jacob, and Abraham, I believe.
Yep. Good job. Another point was 40 years in the wilderness was to motivate the people to keep the commandments in the future and to humble them. So then I don't even know what I wrote here. Yeah, I don't even know what that word is.
What'd you write?
I think it's teaching the people. So no, I don't even know what that word is. When it talked about the manna, the Lord supernaturally provided manna for them. He did that to show the people they don't live on physical bread alone, but also the spiritual food. So that was the reasoning behind that. God did not allow them or allow their clothes to wear out. I thought it was pretty cool. So for the 40 years they were wandering in the wilderness, he didn't allow their clothes to wear out, or of course their ankles swelled, if you'll remember from yesterday. Moses warned the people to keep pride from their hearts, or destruction would follow. So that's a big thing. A lot of people get mixed up in is too much pride in their heart.
Well, yeah, and what I took from reading that was, you're going, because the biggest thing from that chapter for me was you're going to be given this land not because you are so righteous, but because they are wicked. To remove the wicked and put,
Right.
in the Israelites, the people of God. So it was not, you're not getting it because you're righteous.
Yeah.
It was kind of a humbling thing there, like, hey, you're not all that, right? Like, you still got to walk the walk.
Yeah. So like you're saying, don't believe things happen because you're righteous. They happen as God lets them happen. So those two points go together. So yeah, that's just kind of what I went back. Those are some of the main points of the three chapters.
Today we're on 11.
Yeah, so today we're on 11.
Deuteronomy 11.
I can't remember what that dang word.
At least I'm not the only one that can't read my own writing. Are we ready? Yeah?
Yeah, guess so.
Sure?
Deuteronomy 11. Love the Lord your God and keep his requirements, his decrees, his laws, and his commands always. Remember today that your children were not the ones who saw and experienced the discipline of the Lord your God, his majesty, his mighty hand, his outstretched arm, the signs he performed, and the things he did in the heart of Egypt, both to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his whole country. What he did to the Egyptian army, to its horses and chariots, how he overwhelmed them with the waters of the Red Sea as they were pursuing you, and how the Lord brought lasting ruin on them. It was not your children who saw what he did for you in the wilderness until you arrived at this place, and what he did to Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab the Reubenite, when the earth opened its mouth right in the middle of all Israel and swallowed them up with their households, their tents, and every living thing that belonged to them. But it was your own eyes that saw these great things the Lord has done. Observe therefore all the commands I am giving you today, so that you may have the strength to go in and take over the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, and so that you may live long in the land the Lord swore to your ancestors to give to them and their descendants, a land flowing with milk and honey. The land you are entering to take over is not like the land of Egypt from which you have come, where you planted your seed and irrigated it by foot as in a vegetable garden. But the land you are crossing the Jordan to take possession of is a land of mountains and valleys that drinks rain from heaven. It is a land the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are continually on it from the beginning of the year to its end. So if you faithfully obey the commands I am giving you today, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul, then I will send rain on your land in its season, both autumn and spring rains, so that you may gather in your grain, new wine and olive oil. I will provide grass in the fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied. Be careful, or you will be enticed to turn away and worship other gods and bow down to them. Then the Lord's anger will burn against you, and he will shut up the heavens so that it will not rain, and the ground will yield no produce, and you will soon perish from the good land the Lord is giving you. Fix these words of mine in your hearts and minds. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors, as many as the days that the heavens are above the earth. If you carefully observe all these commands I'm giving you to follow, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to hold fast to him, then the Lord will drive out all these nations before you, and you will dispossess nations larger and stronger than you. Every place where you set your foot will be yours. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the Euphrates River to the Mediterranean Sea. No one will be able to stand against you. The Lord your God, as he promised you, will put the terror and fear of you on the whole land wherever you go. See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the commands of the Lord your God that I am giving you today. The curse if you disobey the commands of the Lord your God and turn from the way that I command you today by following other gods, which you have not known. When the Lord your God has brought you into the land you are entering to possess, you are to proclaim on Mount Gerizim the blessings, and on Mount Ebal the curses. As you know, these mountains are across the Jordan, westward toward the setting sun, near the great trees of Moreh, in the territory of those Canaanites living in the Arabah, in the vicinity of Gilgal. You are about to cross the Jordan to enter and take possession of the land the Lord your God has given you. When you have taken it over and are living there, be sure that you obey all the decrees and laws I am setting before you today. Judah.
You know, that whole deal that goes back to, you know, worshiping other gods and stuff. So I had this thing that happened yesterday where it was on one of the lasering pages that we were on. So this guy, he had posted a picture of a coin that he was trying to get the settings down to laser engrave Trump's head on this coin. It was an order that a group of people had ordered from him to make Trump coins. You know, like the challenge coins kind of deal. So anyhow, he posted a picture of it, and the very first comment was this jackwagon that said something just straight up derogatory about it. You know,
Because it was Trump?
Yeah, saying, "Hey, well, you know, I'm not gonna help you with that because," and he said it in different terms, but it was, I mean, that's basically what it was. It was, he said, "I'm not gonna help you with that because of who you've got on the coin, you know, Trump on the coin." So I replied to his comment. I said, "You know, it's unfortunate that you would let politics get in the way of you helping someone." And then of course it all just blew up. It all snowballed and just blew up from there. Then this other, you know, so we were kind of going back and forth, you know, and you know, I was staying out of the whole politic thing of it, and you know, so I made a couple comments, and he was like, he said something to the effect of, "Hey, dude, I'm just, you know, messing around. I never even liked the guy before he even became president. Blah blah blah." Most people didn't even know Trump before. I mean, they just knew him as a real estate tycoon, you know. But nobody really knew him until he became president. But anyhow, so everybody's kind of going back and forth on this whole deal, and then this other guy jumped in and said something to my comment or something, you know, something kind of like, "Oh, you mean to the effect of, you know, the way ICE treats, or the way the way they operate, you know, on the border as far as taking illegal aliens back in." And I replied I'm trying to set this whole story up here, and I replied back to him that, you know, hey, one thing is the humanity of somebody, you know, and the other is following laws, so you don't have a valid point. And then this guy replied back, "Oh, well, I see you're effing racist, blah, 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 all this and that," and just went on a tangent because he didn't have anything else to say. That's all that he could reply back to, because he didn't have a valid point. And so, you know, I wrote, blah, 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 "Hey, I'm just making the point of you shouldn't let your politics get in the way of, you know, you helping someone, it's about being human. I said, I'm not going to get into politics, blah, blah, blah. I hope you have a great day. God bless you. So this dude replied back with, like a meme, yeah, okay, whatever. He said, and I'll hope, he said, and I'll pray that my God Odin blesses you. You have a good day. I don't know if anybody knows who Odin. Do you know who Odin is? Odin was a Viking. He's a Norse god. Nobody even knew who the hell Odin was until the goddamn TV show came out. Okay? So I said all this to say this. It's very easy for people just to go off worshiping somebody else.
Because it fits their narrative, because it's cool to them?
Because it's cool to them. Like whenever the show, whenever the series Sons of Anarchy came out, all of a sudden everybody was a goddamn biker. Everybody was in a biker gang. There was even people running around with Sons of Anarchy cuts on. I know it's called a cut from Sons of Anarchy. so but the whole deal, whenever the movie Viking, or the show Vikings came out, now all of a sudden everybody's a goddamn Viking. And they're worshiping the Viking gods, the god of Odin. And I just wanted to come back and just explode on this dude,
Lucy.
Because like I said, people didn't even know who Odin was unless, you date, I'm going to say that's not the right way to say that, but unless you're from that area, or, your ancestors is, were then, and
my ancestors were Vikings, and I didn't know who Odin was until I thought about it.
Well,
it's
like
just
there's
from learning, not from
but there's some people that research that stuff, and that I don't even know the right way of saying it.
God, Odin blesses you too.
But yeah, he was like, he's like, I'll ask my God Odin to bless you today. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Anyhow, so this kind of just reading this, and the point that I said again from yesterday. Can
you read your writing?
Yeah, no, yeah. about don't worship other gods. Things happen because the Lord our God wants it to happen. He is the only one and true God. And for somebody to come back and just, they've all of a sudden, since the show Vikings came out, now they've all of a sudden turned into worshiping Odin.
Those are people that are just lost and looking for something to cling to, and they don't really have dedication or it's just easier because it's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not. It's just a trend, is all it is, and
Anyhow.
Hopefully he'll find the right path eventually.
Yeah. And that probably would have been a good place to, a good point to. Yeah, it probably wouldn't. It would have been a good setting to. Yeah. Anyhow. That was 11.
11. Dolores was for the purpose of educating the people, whether by grace or punishment. The Lord's dealings with the nations were always designed to teach them about His holiness and prepare them for future events. And then, that applies to life too. We all have to go through certain things to prepare for the next, I think.
Let's see, I've got obedience to God's instructions come as a result of our love relationship with Him. Love for God is a major motivating force in our obedience to the civil, ceremonial, and moral obligations He requests of us. It says our love and obedience should be a natural response to the love He has shown to us. If we are nurturing sinful thoughts and practices, we should expect God's anger. These verses should challenge us to honestly examine our lives and determine those areas that are out of line with God's revealed moral will. God's wrath is not a thing to be taken lightly. It says, but if we're willing to change with His help, His grace is more than sufficient to help us overcome our sinful thoughts and deeds.
That's all you got?
That is all I've got.
Deuteronomy 12. These are the decrees and laws you must be careful to follow in the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you to possess, as long as you live in the land. Destroy completely all the places on the high mountains, on the hills, and under every spreading tree where the nations you are dispossessing worship their gods. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and burn their Asherah poles in the fire. Cut down the idols of their gods and wipe out their names from those places. You must not worship the Lord your God in their way, but you are to seek the place the Lord your God will choose from among all your tribes to put His name there for His dwelling. To that place you must go. There bring your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts, what you have vowed to give, and your free will offerings, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks. There, in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your family shall eat and shall rejoice in everything you have put your hand to, because the Lord your God has blessed you. You are not to do as we do here today, everyone doing as they see fit, since you have not yet reached the resting place and the inheritance the Lord your God is giving you. But you will cross the Jordan and settle in the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and He will give you rest from all your enemies around you, so that you will live in safety. Then to the place the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for His name, there you are to bring everything I command you, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts, and all the choice possessions you have vowed to the Lord. And there rejoice before the Lord your God, you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, and the Levites from your towns who have no allotment or inheritance of their own. Be careful not to sacrifice your burnt offerings anywhere you please. Offer them only at the place the Lord will choose in one of your tribes, and there observe everything I command you. Nevertheless, you may slaughter your animals in any of your towns and eat as much of the meat as you want, as if it were gazelle or deer, according to the blessing the Lord your God gives you. Both the ceremonially unclean and the clean may eat it, but you must not eat the blood. Pour it out on the ground like water. You must not eat in your own towns the tithe of your grain, and new wine and olive oil, or the firstborn of your herds and flocks, or whatever you have vowed to give, or your free will offerings or special gifts. Instead, you are to eat them in the presence of the Lord your God, at the place the Lord your God will choose. You, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, and the Levites from your towns, and you are to rejoice before the Lord your God in everything you put your hand to. Be careful not to neglect the Levites as long as you live in your land. When the Lord your God has enlarged your territory, as He promised you, and you crave meat and say, I would like some meat, then you may eat as much of it as you want. If the place where the Lord your God chooses to put His name is too far away from you, you may slaughter animals from the herds and flocks the Lord has given you, as I have commanded you. And in your own towns you may eat as much of them as you want. Eat them as you would gazelle or deer. Both the ceremonially unclean and the clean may eat. But be sure you do not eat the blood, because the blood is the life, and you must not eat the life with the meat. You must not eat the blood. Pour it out on the ground like water. Do not eat it, so that it may go well with you and your children after you, because you will be doing what is right in the eyes of the Lord. But take your consecrated things in whatever you have vowed to give, and go to the place the Lord will choose. Present your burnt offerings on the altar of the Lord your God, both the meat and the blood. The blood of your sacrifices must be poured beside the altar of the Lord your God, but you may eat the meat. Be careful to obey all these regulations I am giving you, so that it may always go well with you and your children after you, because you will be doing what is good and right in the eyes of the Lord your God. The Lord your God will cut off before you the nations you are about to invade and dispossess. But when you have driven them out and settled in their land, and after they have been destroyed before you, be careful not to be ensnared by inquiring about their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? We will do the same. You must not worship the Lord your God in their way, because in worshiping their gods they do all kinds of detestable things the Lord hates. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods. See that you do all I command you. Do not add to it or take away from it.
It's pretty cut and dry, and it repeats it. This is basically, a lot of Deuteronomy repeats books from the beginning, reiterates it.
Yeah, it's a kind of a summary of the things that you really need to pay attention to.
Because it's a new generation that's coming into the land of Canaan.
And they're worried about them, I think most of it, it's like a parent, you know what I mean? So your kids are going out to do something for the first time and you're reiterating those things that you really want them to pay attention to.
Yeah.
But the whole thing with worshiping their gods is just repetitive because it happened with the calf. Yeah, and then the women.
Yeah, and then the women pulled them in as they started coming into the different towns and stuff and taking them.
But because curiosity, I believe, is natural for humankind. So you ask these questions, like, what is that? How do you do that? Why are you doing that?
Here's my question. I don't know, and I don't think it kind of goes against what it's saying here, but I've always felt that you should know about other religions. You should know about the different ways people worship, because I think it, still follow your beliefs, but what is, I don't know, but what
Well, I know.
What's the other side of the story? Does that make sense? I don't necessarily think it's questioning your beliefs or questioning the Bible, but I've always thought that, and don't consider this blasphemy, but like Satanists, like what exactly do they believe? Like, what are their beliefs? Like, how do they worship? People fearmonger it a lot, saying, oh, they sacrifice animals, they sacrifice people, all this and that. But do they really? Because when you see stuff like on TikTok, there's a whole side of TikTok where it's, there's Satanists on there. And, they talk about, I'm not going to seek it out, it's just as you flip through, sometimes you just come across one. But, sometimes those guys and girls will talk about, hey, we don't do the stuff that people say we do. But if you just go ask somebody that's just been told stories, well, that's what they do. It's a pagan religion. But I've always been curious on, like, what does this specific religion believe? What does this specific religion believe? Like, how do they feel their God fits in? Or their Messiah? How do they feel it fits in the whole scheme of things? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think,
because I don't think you should be ignorant to the fact of other religions.
no, but as we read this, it's like it's really hard to say. I know we just read, hey, don't even ask. But I really do think that you need to understand the opponent, if you will.
Yeah,
And I'm not, look, there's a lot going on out there that's not Christ-like. And I think if you're gonna I don't want to say be an opponent, but let's just, if you were going to talk to somebody about it, like you have to be open, right? Like you got to be able to talk to somebody in order to discuss the different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if if you're talking to somebody who does not believe in God because they have another God, you actually have to talk to that person and open up the conversation about their religion in order to share yours. So you'd never be able to, you'd never have the opportunity to really testify, I guess, or even give your side or your option to that person if you never asked.
Yeah, and that's, I would think the same thing. Like I know, man, I know there's with the evangelists, you know, that go door to door. Man, I know a lot of those kids are, I mean, they put a lot of those kids like young. Like those are, some of those kids are pretty young. I think there's a certain age that they can't do it before. Like a guy that I used to work with, like he was an evangelist, and he told me the whole process of how they do that. Like they have to pay off all their debt. They have to, there's certain steps they have to do before they can go in the ministry field, going door to door. And a lot of times they'll go to a different town or a different state, and they've got a certain amount of time that they serve and all this and that. So he was explaining the whole thing. He was explaining that whole thing, how it all worked. But man, I've seen those kids get destroyed trying to talk about their religion. I mean, just flat out, like,
It's a brave thing.
just, I mean, it's very brave what they do. And I've always said that converting somebody from one religion to another has to be the hardest thing ever.
Well,
How to prove your God is the right God versus
I don't think
what
I
they've
don't
done.
think that can happen without a crack in the door.
Yeah. And like you said, I think you should know about different religions to understand how they operate, because if you don't know, in my opinion, and I know the Bible is telling you different right here, and I know I shouldn't question it, but I just feel that
But this is Old Testament. We got a long way to go.
I just feel that you should know, not necessarily what you're up against, but in lack for better terms, you should kind of know what you're up against. You know, you should know how the different religions operate.
Mm.
You know, anywhere from how Mormons operate, how Catholics operate, how Christians operate, like Baptists. Catholics and Baptists are both Christian, but it's all Christian. But you know the different branches of it. You should know how. Like I didn't know. Like remember I was telling you, I didn't know that Catholic, the Ten Commandments that they
Are different.
go by are they're the same, but they're in a different order
Mhm.
according to what this was saying. It was in a different order, but you should know how Islam works, because Islam it's a very old, just like Christianity. It's a very old, but it's a fast progressing religion that a lot of people are jumping into. You know, before you can talk to somebody like that, I mean, I think you should really know it, because, like I said, man, I've seen those people get absolutely destroyed when trying to ask somebody if they know Christ and stuff. And it's a very brave thing to do. I don't ever believe that it's something that I can do. I'd like to be able to talk to people about Christ, but man, it'd be tough.
It's brave.
And just to get destroyed like that and continue doing it. You know, I mean, like just I'm telling you, I've seen them get destroyed. Just put so far down on why their religion ain't even right, kind of deal.
Well,
It's tough.
it's a
Anyhow,
okay.
what was that? 12? A place of worship was essential to the well-being of God's Old Testament people. The tabernacle and the Jerusalem temple of latter times provided that place. It is important for God's people to be able to worship Him. The encouragement that can be found by meeting with other believers to worship God will help us to preserve spiritual gains. When all else fails, follow directions. So often we attempt to accomplish God's work in our own way and in our own strength. It is quite possible to do the right thing in the wrong way. That's a good point. I'll repeat that. It is quite possible to do the right thing in the wrong way. We're to follow God's directions, all of God's directions, and nothing but God's directions. Do it God's way. That is the divine prescription for physical, emotional, and spiritual health.
Ready, Freddie? 13.
Deuteronomy 12.
Oops.
These are the destroy. Since you have not been careful not to sacrifice your burnt offerings anywhere you please, these are the decrees and laws you must be careful to follow in the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has.
Fix it.
Deuteronomy 13.
Yeah.
Deuteronomy 13. If
Thank
a
you.
prophet or one who foretells by dreams appears among you and announces to you a sign or wonder, and if the sign or wonder spoken of takes place, and the prophet says, "Let us follow other gods, gods you have not known, and let us worship them," you must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer. The Lord your God is testing you to find out whether you love Him with all your heart and with all your soul. It is the Lord your God you must follow, and Him you must revere. Keep His commands and obey Him, serve Him, and hold fast to Him. That prophet or dreamer must be put to death for inciting rebellion against the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt and redeemed you from the land of slavery. That prophet or dreamer tried to turn you from the way the Lord your God commanded you to follow. You must purge the evil from among you. If your very own brother or your son or daughter or the wife you love or your closest friend secretly entices you, saying, "Let us go and worship other gods, gods that neither you nor your ancestors have known, gods of the peoples around you, whether near or far, from one end of the land to the other, do not yield to them or listen to them. Show them no pity. Do not spare them or shield them. You must certainly put them to death. Your hand must be the first in putting them to death, and then the hands of all the people. Stone them to death because they tried to turn you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Then all Israel will hear and be afraid, and no one among you will do such an evil thing again. If you hear it said about one of the towns the Lord your God is giving you to live in, that troublemakers have arisen among you, and have led the people of their own town astray, saying, "Let us go and worship other gods, gods you have not known," then you must inquire, probe, and investigate it thoroughly. And if it is true, and it has been proved, that this detestable thing has been done among you, you must certainly put to the sword all who live in that town. You must destroy it completely, both its people and its livestock. You are to gather all the plunder of the town into the middle of the public square and completely burn the town and all its plunder as a whole burnt offering to the Lord your God.
Dang.
That town is to remain a ruin forever, never to be rebuilt, and none of the condemned things are to be found in your hands. Then the Lord will turn from his fierce anger, will show you mercy, and will have compassion on you. He will increase your numbers as he promised on oath to your ancestors, because you obey the Lord your God by keeping all his commands that I am giving you today and doing what is right in his eyes.
Whew.
Deuteronomy 14.
Well, that was this warning about false prophets is as important today as it was in ancient times. We all know of individuals who have gained a wide following, but those teachings do not measure up to the truth of God's word. It says, as we seek spiritual growth, we need to measure the teachings we choose to live by against God's truth revealed in the Bible.
That was a tough one.
Yeah. I wonder if that's the Salem witch trials, if that's how they,
Burn it down.
if they pulled from that.
Here's a poppy.
Hey Bible readers, I'm Tara Lee Cobble and I'm your host for the Bible Recap. Today we drop back in on Moses' parting words to the Israelites before his death. And he starts with a command we've heard often, but we've never really drilled down on it. God has commanded us to love him. The word love here indicates emotion. It's action adjacent, but it's emotion specific. How do you command a feeling? Jen Wilkins says, the heart cannot love what the mind does not know. And I'm guessing that by fixing your eyes on his word daily, by looking for him in scripture instead of for yourself, that you love him more now than you did 75 days ago. The more we take our eyes off ourselves and get to know this infinitely lovable God, the more we will love him. Moses speaks specifically to the adults among the crowd who were alive even when the Exodus happened, and he reminds them again to remember who God is and what he has done for them. In 11:16, he tells them to pay attention to their hearts. There are things around them that will entice them to worship them, and they have to be vigilant to not be led astray by these new shiny things. If they stay faithful to God, no nation will overtake them. God has already proven that he can defeat bigger armies. There's an interesting image at the end of chapter 11. He tells them to choose between blessing and cursing, represented by two different mountains, Mount Gerizim, the Mount of Blessing, and Mount Ebal, the Mount of Cursing. The Israelites will perform the ceremony he commands for this later in Deuteronomy, so we'll just put a pin in it for now, but know that we're coming back to it. Moses continues to warn against idolatry, and if it's starting to feel like he's repeating himself, it's because he is. First of all, he's old, and old men tend to repeat themselves a lot. But second, and most of all, that's what we all do when something is important. This is the theme of Deuteronomy. Moses is very concerned about their faithfulness to God. And it's good for us to read these things as well, because we all need daily reminders of who God is. God called them to remember his word when they sit and when they walk, when they lie down and when they stand, which happens lots of times a day. So surely we can read it once a day. He tells them again to destroy all the paraphernalia of worship to other gods, and he includes a word we've seen a few times but haven't talked about yet. The word is Asherim. Asherah was a fertility goddess, and the Canaanites worshipped fertility. Let's be honest, the Israelites kind of seem to as well, but in their own way. The Asherim are wooden poles with a figure of Asherah on them. God commanded them to destroy these when they entered Canaan. Another phrase you may see referenced sometimes when we're talking about idolatry is the term high places. Most of the pagan worship sites were set up on hills and on mountaintops or under especially distinct trees. So anytime you see God telling them to destroy the high places or the trees, he's talking about destroying the places of Canaanite worship. Moses also reveals that there will be a major shift in how some of the laws and sacrifices work once they get into the Promised Land. First, in 12:5, he says there will be one specific place in the Promised Land where God will make his dwelling place. This is nothing new, really. The manifest presence of the Lord dwells above the Ark of the Covenant in the tabernacle, but the tabernacle will no longer be in the midst of the encampment. It will be in the midst of a whole new land, and they're going to be spread out over that land, which is the size of the state of New Jersey. There will be Levites allotted to live among each tribe, but the tabernacle, wherever it goes, is the only place where they can offer burnt offerings. Moses says that all the Israelites will travel to that one place, even if their allotment of land is far away. And when they go, that's where they will worship God and make their sacrifices to him. I don't know how you felt reading this, but I kind of panicked. If I had been an Israelite and I wasn't in the tribe that got the tabernacle, I would be scrambling to marry into whichever tribe did. Not because I don't like to travel, but because I would want to be as close as possible to wherever that mercy seat was going to be. I cannot imagine having to move away from the presence of God. But one thing they all get to start doing once they enter Canaan is eating meat whenever they want. And even the people who are unclean can eat meat too. What this likely implies is that up to this point, the only meat anyone could eat was meat that had been offered to God. And since having that offering come in contact with an unclean person would make it unclean, then unclean people had to be vegetarians by default. So now with this new situation unfolding where they'll all be spread out instead of living in one encampment, they'd have to travel a long way to make sacrifices, which would mean they'd only get to eat meat when they made that trip. With this new addendum, God is basically saying, you can eat meat in your own land anytime you want. It doesn't have to be sacrificed to me first. Moses warns them not to add or subtract from anything God has commanded. And he gives them a heads up that there could be people who will mingle the truth with lies as a means of enticing them in little by little. For instance, in 13:1-2, he gives the example of a false prophet or a diviner who provides some correct insights, but who uses that wow factor to lure people away from Yahweh. Just because someone speaks truth, it doesn't make them a prophet of Yahweh. Even a false prophet can be right, but it doesn't mean we should follow them or seek truth from them. Moses said God may sometimes use this kind of thing to reveal their hearts to them. And then God commands that the false prophet or diviner get the death penalty. Not only because that's what is required of the covenant when someone breaks the first commandment, but also as a means of protecting their covenant community from further spread of the lies. God demands this kind of allegiance to himself over strangers and even over friends and family members who try to lure them into apostasy. These are intense preventative measures, but these laws are supposed to deter people from rebelling or enticing others into rebellion, and they're a necessary step in God's plan to restore humanity in relationship with himself. This is a protective measure for everyone. Where did you see God's character on display today? What was your God shot? There was a subtle thing that showed up 3 times in chapter 12, verses 7, 12, and 18, that really sets Yahweh apart from all the other false gods. In each of those verses, he says something like, "You shall bring your burnt offerings and sacrifices, and there you shall rejoice." When people made their sacrifices to false gods, it was to appease them or entice them to give them what they wanted. It was an attempt at initiating some kind of response, either, "Hey, please stop punishing me," or "Hey, please give me what I'm asking for." But with our God, none of that is how we approach him. Our offerings to him are a response to his initiation. And it's not about appeasing him, it's about rejoicing in his provision and relationship with us. What a great juxtaposition from every other God. All those worshipers of false gods are missing out on the rejoicing because Yahweh, he's where the joy is.
I think that, honestly, when we were reading 12, what stood out to me was, what it made me think of was that in our battles, challenges, God is with us. And He will give us what we need to get through it. If we just have faith, you know? I think it was this one. It says, "But you will cross the Jordan and settle in the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and He will give you rest from all your enemies around you, so that you will live in safety." Just kind of hits home with all the everyday challenges, you know what I mean? Okay, here we are. Made it through another day.
Lord Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for our blessings. Thank you for, just thank you again for yesterday, for the good fortune that we had. Lord, just thank you for blessing us. Father, thank you for this time that you've allowed us to sit down and read your word and learn more about you. As you guide and direct us as we go through the rest of the day. Forgive us our sins. Forgive us where we fail you. In your Son Christ's name we ask. Amen.
Amen.
Alright guys, thank you all.
Have a good day.
Have a great day. What is today? Today's
Thursday, I
Thursday.
think.
We'll
Thought
see y'all
yesterday
on
was Thursday.
We'll see y'all on Friday.